Today, we're diving deep into a question that affects every single one of us. Why is change so extraordinarily difficult? Think about it. How many times have you, or someone you know, talked about creating a better future, developing a healthier body, or cultivating a more positive mindset, yet somehow real, lasting change seems just out of reach? Why do so many wait for a crisis, a health scare, a relationship breakdown, financial collapse, before they finally decide it's time to change? The reality is, we can choose to transform through pain and suffering, or through joy and inspiration. Which path will you choose? We're going to show you exactly how your brain and body respond to change, and what that biological process actually looks like on a cellular level. Understanding this will help you move beyond the limitations of yesterday and into a future of your own conscious creation. So let's begin by asking the fundamental question: what exactly is change? The thought-reality connection. Let's start with a foundational principle. Your thoughts have a direct connection to your destiny. If you accept this premise, that your thoughts create your life, then consider this startling fact. The average person thinks between 60,000 to 70,000 thoughts in a single day. But here's where it gets interesting. Neuroscience research shows that approximately 90% of those thoughts are exactly the same as the thoughts you had yesterday, and the day before, and the day before that. If your thoughts create your future, yet 90% of your thoughts are recycled from your past, is it any wonder your life doesn't change? This creates a perfectly logical sequence. The same thoughts lead to the same choices. The same choices lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors create the same experiences. The same experiences produce the same emotions. And those same emotions strengthen and reinforce the original thoughts. It's a closed loop, a perfect circuit of sameness that keeps everything in your biology consistent. Your neural circuitry, your neurochemistry, your hormonal balance, and even your gene expression. This stable pattern is what we call your personality, how you think, act, and feel. And your personality is directly connected to your personal reality, the life you're currently living. Neural hardwiring. There's a fundamental principle in neuroscience called Hebb's law, often simplified as neurons that fire together, wire together. This means when you repeatedly activate the same neural pathways, by thinking the same thoughts, making the same choices, performing the same behaviors, creating the same experiences, and feeling the same emotions, you're physically hardwiring your brain into increasingly rigid patterns. By the time most people reach 35 years old, these hardwired programs become their identity, their personality. They become a collection of memorized behaviors, unconscious emotional reactions, automatic habits, and fixed beliefs and perceptions. These operate exactly like computer programs, running automatically in the background, requiring no conscious attention. So here's the dilemma. When you decide to change using only your conscious mind, which neurobiologists estimate is about 5% of your total mental processing power, you're trying to override programs that are operating at 95% capacity in your subconscious. You can think positive thoughts all day long, but those thoughts will never make it past your brainstem into your body because your thought is saying one thing while your body, through years of conditioning, is locked into the past. If you're not using your thoughts to create a vision of a new future, you're left with only the memories of your past. And this makes your life entirely predictable. The morning routine of the unchanged. Let's examine what happens for most people when they wake up in the morning. They start as a clean slate, not thinking anything particular, not feeling anything specific. But within moments, because the brain is fundamentally a record of the past, they begin thinking about the problems in their life. These problems are associated with certain people, places, situations, or circumstances from their past experiences. The moment they start thinking about these problems, they're actually thinking in the past, because these thoughts are memories. And every single one of these problems has an emotion attached to it. The definition of an emotion is simply a record of a past experience. When you start your day by connecting with these familiar feelings, these feelings then drive your subsequent thoughts. If you believe your thoughts create your destiny, but you're thinking in the past, driven by emotions from the past, then your past will inevitably become your future. You're caught in a loop of thinking and feeling and thinking. Why does this happen? When you experience a strong emotion connected to a problem or condition in your life, it commands your attention. The stronger the emotion, the more you focus on what's causing it externally. When you narrow your focus on that cause, your brain freezes the image and takes a mental picture. That picture becomes a memory embedded in your brain's circuitry. From that point forward, you think neurologically within the circuits of that past experience and feel chemically within the boundaries of those memorized emotions. Living in the past. Have you ever asked someone, "Why are you the way you are?" and heard them respond with a story from decades ago? "I am this way because of something that happened to me 35 years ago." What they're really saying, from a biological standpoint, is that 35 years ago they experienced an event that altered them emotionally, and they have not been able to change since that moment. They've been living in that emotional state for 35 years. Here's something fascinating. The latest research on memory reveals that approximately 50% of what people recall about their past isn't even accurate. Memory isn't a perfect recording. It's creative and malleable. But because you don't have the same brain today that you had 35 years ago, people unconsciously embellish or modify their memories to reaffirm the emotional states they've come to identify with. In essence, many people are reliving a painful life they never actually had. Their brain and body are neurologically and chemically being further conditioned into a past that's partly fictional. People get caught in these loops of thinking and feeling, feeling and thinking, for decades. The redundancy of this cycle conditions the body to subconsciously become the mind of that emotion. When the body becomes the mind, the body is literally living in the past. And you cannot create a new future while clutching the emotions of your past. Your body is your unconscious mind. It's subjective. It doesn't distinguish between an actual experience creating an emotion and an emotion you're generating through thought alone. This means your body believes it's living in the same past experience 24/7, 365 days a year. To your body, it literally is the past. To change, therefore, means to be greater than your body, to transcend the conditioning that keeps you anchored to the past. The predictable future. What do most people do once they've reaffirmed the thoughts and feelings, the state of being, that keeps them connected to their familiar past? They immediately crave the predictable future. Living in the familiar past means staying connected to everything known in your life. So people reach for their devices, checking texts, scrolling through social media, posting updates, checking email accounts. They're connecting to everything familiar in their known reality, running through a series of automatic, unconscious behaviors and routines. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions acquired through frequent repetition. It's when you've done something so many times that your body knows how to do it better than your conscious mind. When you've lived the same routine for years, your body operates on autopilot, dragging your mind into a predictable future. You've lost your free will to a program. At this point, it's no longer that your personality is creating your personal reality. Now your personal reality is creating your personality. Your environment is controlling how you think and feel. When someone says, "I'm upset because of this person," or "this situation in my life," what they're really saying is that external circumstances are controlling their internal state. By definition, this means they've become a victim to their life circumstances, an unconscious program they're living by. The formula for real change. To create authentic change, you must be greater than the conditions in your environment. Every great person in history understood this principle. They believed in a future that was so alive in their mind that they began living as if that future reality was already happening in the present moment. They shared the same biological brain structure as you and I. The difference was how they used it. To change, then, means to transcend your environment, to be greater than the circumstances and conditions in your world. As long as you're not creating anything new in your life, everything and everyone already reflected in your brain carries an emotional connection. When you think equal to your environment, you'll keep reaffirming and creating that same environment. Finally, to change means to be greater than time itself. If you're living in the familiar past or the predictable future, both are known quantities. True change requires moving beyond both the programming of the future and the conditioning of the past to settle into the present moment, the only place where creation can occur. There is a specific formula that teaches people how to transcend their bodies, their environments, and time itself. This is the pathway to genuine transformation. Crossing the river of change. To change, you must cross a river. And the hardest part about change is not making the same choice as you did the day before. The moment you decide to make a different choice or do something differently, you step into that river of change. And I want you to be prepared. It's going to feel uncomfortable. It will feel unfamiliar. You'll experience uncertainty and encounter unknowns. Most importantly, you won't be able to predict the next moment, and that's precisely the point. Remember, to change means to be greater than your body. The redundancy of thinking and feeling and thinking, has conditioned your body to cling to what it knows. Now you're taking it into the unknown. Your body responds by saying, "I don't like this. I can't predict the future." And your body begins influencing your thoughts. Suddenly, you hear subvocalizations, that internal chatter, telling you, "Start tomorrow. You'll never change. You're too much like your mother/father. It's your ex's fault. It's your boss's fault. This doesn't feel right." Most people listen to these thoughts as if they're absolute truth. One of my greatest personal discoveries was realizing that just because I have a thought doesn't necessarily mean it's true. When someone commits to change, no more blaming, no more complaining, no more suffering, no more self-pity, they're disrupting their chemical continuity. After a few hours, the body starts craving those familiar chemicals. It's the body influencing the mind to return to the same emotional state. The death of the old self. The journey from your old self to your new self represents the neurological, biological, chemical, hormonal, and genetic death of who you've been. In that void, that place of uncertainty, lies the perfect environment to create something new. People often say, "I'm crossing this river of change, but I can't predict my future." The answer is simple. The best way to predict your future is to create it. What thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? What behaviors do you want to demonstrate in one day, in one lifetime? The latest research in neuroscience reveals something remarkable. When you close your eyes and rehearse an activity mentally, your brain cannot distinguish between what's happening externally and what you're vividly imagining internally. If you're truly present during this mental rehearsal, you begin installing the neurological hardware in your brain that makes it appear as if you've already accomplished your goal. Your brain is no longer just a record of the past, it becomes a map to the future. You're priming your brain for what's to come. If you continue this practice, firing and wiring these new neural connections, that hardware will eventually become automatic software. You may spontaneously begin acting like an abundant person or thinking like a healthy individual because you've installed those circuits. Feeling the future now. Here's the challenging part. Can you teach your body emotionally what your future will feel like before it physically manifests? This means, you can't wait for wealth to feel worthy and abundant. You can't wait for success to feel empowered. You can't wait for a relationship to feel love. You can't wait for healing to feel gratitude or wholeness. You can't wait for the mystical moment to feel awe. That's the old model of reality, cause and effect. Waiting for something outside of us to provide relief from the emptiness we feel inside. Some people spend their entire lives in this state of lack, waiting for external circumstances to change. But if you're waiting, you're not creating. The quantum model of reality is about causing effect. The moment you feel abundant and worthy, you generate wealth. The moment you embrace empowerment, you step toward success. The moment you love yourself and life, you create relationships that match. The moment you feel grateful and whole, your healing begins. The moment you exist in awe, mystical experiences find you. That's causing an effect, the reverse of the old paradigm. Transitioning from one state of mind and body, the old self, into a new state, the new self, means crossing that river to find new opportunities, experiences, and events, because you're no longer the same person who created your old reality. The biological model of change. The biological model of change is about breaking the habit of the old self while reinventing the new self, pruning unnecessary synaptic connections while sprouting new ones, no longer signaling the same genes in the same ways, but learning to signal new genes in new ways. What's encouraging is that you already know how to do this. Everyone has accomplished something great in their lives. What happened when you decided to do something differently? You likely asked yourself, is it possible that I can be healthy? That I can have my dream job or relationship? Visual, frontal lobe highlighted in brain model. When you asked that question, you activated the creative center in your brain, your frontal lobe. Think of it as the symphony conductor with connections to all parts of your brain. It calls up different networks of neurons associated with your question, drawing from things you've learned intellectually and experiences you've had. Then it seamlessly pieces them together. The next thing that happens is you see an image or picture in your mind. That's intention. You're selecting a new possibility for your future. When that image forms, you begin to feel the emotion as if you were already living in that future reality. The thought becomes an experience in your mind, giving your body a taste of the future. Materializing your vision. Here's what successful changemakers do next. They think about all the choices they need to make and write them down. They consider all the experiences that will lead to their vision, all those goals, and every time they write them down, they feel more of those positive emotions. They review them consistently to keep their conscious mind focused on what they want. Then they do something brilliant. They write down the thoughts they won't let slip by unnoticed. I can't. It's too hard. I'll never change. These are thoughts that, if responded to, will cause you to lose sight of your future. Every day, they remind themselves of who they want to become and who they no longer want to be. Then synchronicities, opportunities, and coincidences begin appearing in their lives, the universe confirming they're moving toward a new future. When the vision finally manifests, it's not about the event itself, it's about the fact that they created it. The side effect is becoming more whole, more present, more loving, because they're living life from completeness rather than lack. The 3 barriers to change. There are only 3 things that prevent us from realizing our vision of the future. The body. Most people say, I didn't feel like it, or I'm tired, or I have a headache. They use feelings as a barometer for change. When you use feelings to determine your actions, you'll always talk yourself out of possibility. The environment. I have these people to see, places to go, things to do. Environments seduce people back into their present reality, keeping them from creating something new. There just wasn't enough time. People shrink back into mediocrity, finding others who do the same. They use each other to reaffirm their addiction to victimization. The observer effect. When you reach the lowest point, where you don't even want to keep social engagements, something remarkable can happen. You begin to see yourself through someone else's eyes. In neuroscience, this is called metacognition. You start observing your thoughts, noticing your behaviors, examining the feelings you've been living by. You might realize, I didn't even know I was suffering, it just feels like how I've always lived. The act of observing these states of mind and body means you're no longer the program, you're the consciousness observing the program. This is the first crucial step to change. Now that you understand this fundamental model of how change works at a biological level, how do you apply this information to create your future self? If where we place our attention is where we place our energy, how do we direct our attention toward what we want instead of what we don't want? In our next video, we'll show you how to find that sweet spot of the present moment, the only place where you can truly create a new future.